Gosh, are we live? I hope we're live. I see the little spinny thing saying that we're live. Checking if we're live. Yeah, it looks like we're live, so that's good. Oh, it has been one absolutely insane weekend, guys. Thank you for joining me for yet another lunch live stream. I hope you guys are doing all right. It's been it's been a crazy weekend here in America, good old America. I know that I do have a bunch of international viewers. I know there's some folks from, just from outside of the borders. So I felt like usually I don't talk about political stuff or really, this like social or cultural things. But with what's been going on in America, I feel like this is kind of this is more like catharsis for me more than anything else. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about the crazy, insane stuff that's going on today. That's been going on. For anybody who is here to just eat some lunch, I do actually have some lunch. This is a crumb cake, a nice coffee cake. Fresh baked, ready to go. Looks absolutely delicious, so I am planning on eating a little bit of that. But yeah, the world has been changing the last couple of months, the last several months. And then on top of that, just last week we had some really tragic things occur in the United States that really escalated. And if I feel like most people probably know what I'm talking about, but in case some folks aren't familiar with it, I'm gonna start from the beginning and talk about everything that's happened a little bit. But yeah, we'll get into that. But right now, I want to see what the cross section on this crumb cake looks like. It's just a standard box cake. Let's see if I can get rid of this aluminum foil first. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Yeah, look at that. Nice little smile in the middle of that crumb cake. Excellent. Super good. Yeah, I think the best thing about coffee cake is the crumb stuff on top. The actual cake itself, pretty dang good, but yeah, it's not a coffee cake if it doesn't have crumbs and stuff on top. So I do want to make sure that my blood sugar is nice and high, nice and elevated. Give myself some energy to make it through the day. Oh, that is so good. I think it's a little bit ironic that the best thing to have with crumb cake, or with coffee cake, I should say, is probably milk. Milk goes in coffee, but yeah, coffee and coffee cake, not the best combination in my opinion. It's probably milk and coffee cake. Oh my gosh. Coffee cake is something that my family used to have basically every year around Christmas time. So just having this, even though it isn't homemade or anything like that, just a regular Krusty's crumb cake baking mix, it still brings back memories. It's still really good. Oh my gosh. All right, so let's roll back the clock a little bit, talk about some of the craziness that's been happening in the last couple of months. So we had this worldwide pandemic that started several months ago. Everybody's aware of it. The COVID-19 pandemic, coronavirus out of Canada, out of China. Oh my goodness, that was probably the worst Freudian slip ever. I like Canada. Just for the record, I think Canada's a great place. China, kind of ambivalent. From the looks of it, the Chinese government, not the best in the world. So yeah, I will not conflate Canada and China ever again. But coronavirus came out of China, whole world shut down, and that's why basically I've been working from home for the last several months. That's why I've been doing these live streams. I've been working from home. I've been sitting in front of my computer basically constantly, just, I don't know, 14 hours a day, 18 hours a day, every day for the last like 3 months. And it's been really, really insane. So last week, oh my goodness. First of all, I want to catch up with some of the folks in the chat. Frederic, thank you for joining us today. Say, hey, Steve, looks delicious. Yeah, it is really delicious. Even though it is just a regular little box cake, I think that the Krusty's box cakes are pretty dang good. So I'll enjoy them. Eric Gunnarsson, thank you for joining. You say in Sweden, in the Swedish media, it seems like there's a civil war going on in the U.S. at the moment. Yeah, it's kind of what it feels like, man. It's really disheartening with a lot of the stuff that's going on. AJAT says, yummy. My mom recently made coffee cake muffins out of the same brand you used to make yours. That sounds really, really good. Yeah, I used to make coffee cake muffins every now and then, back when I was making breakfast for the local shelter, using this mix. You know, every now and then I didn't have time to quite, put in the effort to make something homemade. So I'd kind of do something quick, just mix it together, bake it, and send it over. And everybody always seemed to love them. So yeah, they're absolutely delicious, especially if you do it right with the like ribbon of crumb in the middle. It's a little bit of a pain to get that ribbon in the middle just right, but when you do, it's so good. All right, enough beating around the bush. I got to talk about this stuff because it is very tragic, the things that have been happening lately. So this all started in the middle of last week, where this gentleman, this African-American individual, was very tragically killed by a white police officer in Minneapolis. His name was George Lloyd. That's the name that you'd probably want to put in your internet search engine if you wanted to find out more about this story. But George Lloyd was pulled over for, like, it wasn't like a violent thing that he was doing. He was suspected of counterfeiting, or using counterfeit bills, I believe. Let's see, he was suspected of passing a counterfeit bill, and he died after a white Minneapolis police officer, ignoring his pleas for mercy, pressed the man's neck into the street. All right, this is awful. This is horrible. I mean, clearly there's a group of police officers, and this is a picture of the man. This isn't some picture that's taken out of context. A picture of the police officer with his knee on top of this guy. Like, there are 3 police officers there. Like, they did not need to use excessive force to keep this guy restrained. He wasn't violent. He wasn't doing anything bad, and he repeatedly was pleading with the police to, like, let him up and let him breathe. And there were people all around him. It's just, it's insane to me. Like, I don't understand how this kind of thing can happen. So, since that happened last week, there have been protests against the police all across the country. And by and large, like, the protests, you could tell that the feeling of the protests, the manner in which people are going about this was very, like, it wasn't violent. People wanted to go out in the streets and walk and talk and hold up signs and do exactly what you need to do with protests, like make sure that your voice is heard, like everything along those lines. So I think when it comes to the protests, they are, like, for the most part, they're nonviolent. I think that what they're doing is great. I'm glad that they're doing it. This is something that's been endemic in America, to overuse the kind of wording that's been used for other things lately. And this particular article in Daily News goes on to elaborate how there are other African-American individuals who have been victims of police brutality, largely at the hand of white police officers. And I feel like, this isn't the kind of thing that I usually talk about, but, like, I don't know if you've noticed, but I am about as white as people come. You know, I'm translucent. I am pearlescent. I am alabaster. So I feel like hopefully people will be able to hear a little bit more about what I'm talking about. Let's see. Free says, "Oh, it's George Floyd, not George Lloyd." Did I say George Lloyd? I apologize. It is George Floyd. So this is George Floyd. If I said George Lloyd, I must have misspoke. My apologies. That was my bad. So yeah, I definitely don't want to take away from the voice of the African Americans who are protesting against this, and Black people around the world. I know that racism is not something that's only happening in America. It's so tragic. Like it boggles my mind that this kind of stuff can still happen in the 21st century. Like, haven't we moved on beyond this? Haven't we moved on beyond thinking that having unconscious biases against individuals who don't look like us? It's really bad. Like I'm kind of at a loss for words because I really don't know how to express this. Obviously, it's not something that I've experienced firsthand. I've got this kind of unspoken protective shield against police brutality because of the color of my skin. So, like, if I saw something like that happening, I'm not going to go out and be violent against or speak out against police officers just on hand at large, because I know that most police officers out there, like the vast majority of them, are good people. This one individual had a record of abuse and violence and what do they call it? Excessive force, that kind of thing. So it's mind-boggling to me that he was still on the police force, that he was able to go out and do these kinds of things. But yeah, like if I ever saw something like that occurring in front of me, you bet your ass I would step between a violent police officer and a person of color. Because like I said, somehow, for some reason, because I live in this particular country and because of the color of my skin, police are nice to me. They're nicer to me. Every time I've been pulled over by a police officer, I've never feared for my life. I usually smile and strike up a conversation. We chat, and it's ridiculous. I know that's about the only thing that I could possibly do. So really today, like I said, this is more about my own catharsis and getting these feelings off my chest than anything else. I'm sorry for folks who tuned in to see the usual prattling about some random subject, but today, I'm talking about some pretty heavy stuff today. Now I do want to definitely call out the thing that makes me the most angry about this is that on top of the protests, on top of the people who are marching in solidarity with George Floyd and other individuals for whom this is unfortunately happening on too regular of a basis, there's also been riots that a lot of people are conflating with these protests, these non-violent protests, alongside really violent individuals who are rioting in the streets, who are looting, who are burning, they're throwing Molotov cocktails, burning police vehicles, tagging a bunch of different stores. There's been some really terrible images and videos out of Atlanta, I believe, in particular, but it's happening all across the country. So let's see. Following the mass protests across the country of George Floyd, the National Guard has been deployed in 15 states and Washington, D.C., the National Guard confirmed. As of this morning, approximately 5,000 National Guard soldiers and airmen were activated in response to civil disturbances in 15 states, and another 2,000 are prepared to activate if necessary. Oh my gosh. This is like police state stuff, and it's not justifiable. It's understandable why it's happening, but it's really not justifiable. This is ridiculous. Let's see. 25 cities have imposed curfews. So there was a curfew in Seattle. I believe it was 7 p.m. on Saturday night. There was a curfew in I shouldn't say it was 7 p.m. It was probably sometime around there. There's a curfew in Bellevue, which is a smaller city just outside of Seattle, closer to me, unfortunately. It's like a 10-minute drive away from my house, where there's a 5 p.m. curfew, and people who were out on the streets. And there was rioting and looting and violence on the streets. And I saw, it's ridiculous. So again, I don't want to conflate the kinds of rioting and violence with the protesters. Those guys are great. The rioting and violence, like, I can't condone that. It's awful. Anybody who's doing that is just absolutely despicable. They need to be thrown into a jail cell. And yeah. And I'm sure there are some individuals who are like caught between it, who are taking advantage of this, who just want to go out while all this chaos is going on and grab themselves a TV. And that's the absolute worst. I mean, that's horrible. So this Newsweek article lists the all the different cities where this is happening. I've heard it's particularly bad in Los Angeles. I saw in downtown Seattle, around my hometown. Like, there's some scary imagery coming out of it. Yeah, it's really bad. Now, anybody who's like taking a close look at the tabs that are open on my browser probably knows where this is leading. Let's see. Yeah, this is Q13 Fox, local news station in Seattle. And, I mean, I'm not going to play any of these videos, but you can just see in the still image in this video, like, that is a police vehicle, a police SUV that is on fire in downtown Seattle. Like, it's crazy. It's absolute bedlam. Yeah, I don't know what to say about it. Like, I just have no words to say about it. Now, unfortunately, like I said, a lot of people are conflating these riots and the protests, which are two completely separate groups. Like, I can't emphasize that enough. The violence and everything that's going on are perpetrated by these individuals who are, like, going and instigating violence against police. They're basically provoking violence and like fading away back into the crowds of peaceful protesters, which, you know, first of all, they're avoiding any responsibility of their actions themselves, and secondly, they're provoking the police. They're provoking these responses from the police, because let's face it, like, police, they don't typically act without a reason. They only respond to things. Like, that's kind of what police do. And there are certainly some circumstances where that hasn't been the case, but, like, these police are responding to violent acts and violent groups, and then they're targeting, unfortunately, the peaceful protests as these violent individuals, like, fade away into the groups of peaceful protesters. And I mean, this is largely attributed to this group Antifa, which is just the worst of the worst. I would consider myself to be a pretty moderate person politically, which a lot of people can say that that's just waffling, like I don't make decisions, whatever you want to call it. You know, I'm not super far left, I'm not really conservative, I just try to think with my head and think about the context of in which a lot of the decisions are being made, instead of subscribing to a single ideology and just following every single idea associated with that ideology. But Antifa is like the far, far left, stands for anti-fascist. And Antifa has actually been around for about a century. Like, I was kind of surprised when I was looking into this that Antifa has been around for a long, long time. So let's see, Antifa. The Antifa movement, this article is particularly about the Antifa in the United States. Let's see, it is a movement in the United States. Okay. Yeah, I was trying to parse this sentence in my head. The Antifa movement in the United States is a left-wing, anti-fascist, militant political activist movement that comprises autonomous activist groups that aim to achieve political objectives through direct action rather than through policy reform. I mean, they've basically been labeled terrorists. Like, they are domestic terrorists. You know, Antifa, the Antifa groups have been mobilizing. They've been putting out statements that they're actually going to utilize and leverage these peaceful protests that are going on as cover for their own actions, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like, you know, looting a Target, looting a Walmart, looting a local business, that's not going to improve anything from anywhere. Like nobody. That's just throwing your life away. That is burning down your own house. Like that's the best way that I've been able to hear it articulated. Let's see. Activists engage in varied protest tactics, including digital activism, property damage, and physical violence and harassment against those whom they identify as fascist, racist, or on the far right. This is ridiculous. You cannot fight an idea, idealism with physical violence. Like it's complete absurdity. Like the world we live in is bananas. This is so ridiculous. And hearing about the stuff that's been going on, like the rioting and the looting that's been going on, literally a 10-minute drive away from my house. Like I'm wondering, I'm really hoping that it doesn't extend into my own neighborhood. I'm kicking myself for not applying for like a concealed carry permit months ago when I had the time to do so. Oh my gosh. Let's see, the history of it started in the 1920s. Antifa came to America in 2007. So they have been around for a little while in America, but it is fairly new. Like I said, it's these far left extremist group that's just ridiculous. Again, anybody who belongs to Antifa, anybody who claims to belong to Antifa is just, they should be buried in a hole. Like they don't deserve the light of day. They don't deserve the time of day, I should say. It's a bunch of hate. So my heart goes out to George Floyd and all of the individuals who are affected by that. It's I'm getting got a pop-up from YouTube says that my streaming is a little bit chunky. So I apologize for anybody who's seeing some latency issues. Hopefully this is still going through. Like I just lost my train of thought. I was going to say my heart definitely goes out to the people who are affected by the violence against African Americans, against people of color. It's mind-boggling to me that can still happen in this day and age. I thought that maybe we would be able to move past it by now, but I guess not. Like, I'm going to go out. I'm going to try what I can do to like voice my disappointment in this, voice anger over everything that's been going on, and do what I can to change my local community. But yeah, I'm going to protect myself against the chuckleheads and Antifa and everything like that, first and foremost. Oh my gosh, this has been such a heavy day. The weekend has weighed so heavily on me. I will say that I've seen a lot of things happen this weekend that have also like been very inspiring. There are protesters who are associating themselves with George Floyd and everything that happened along those lines, and they're lining up in front of local businesses to protect them against the violent protesters, or against violent rioters, I should say. And some of the protest groups are actually like cornering individuals who are being violent, who are trying to instigate violence and looting, and basically like taking them, handing them over to police lines. So this isn't all bad. Everything that you're seeing in America about the world is burning, everything like that, that is down to a few individuals like who are just on the very extreme in terms of their political ideologies. So America's going to be fine. I think that we're going to survive this. Individuals who think that chaos and violence is the way to affect change is going to be sorely disappointed when, a year from now, people are not even going to remember this. It's not even going to be a blip. Their actions are just going to be worth nothing. A week from now, people are going to look back and realize just how ignorant and how violent their actions were. And they're going to realize that the majority of people out there are good people who, after the violence, the riots, and everything that was happening on Saturday night, on Sunday morning, there were people from downtown Seattle came to help clean up all the damage that was done, because the vast, vast majority of people out there are good people. Like, that's something that we can rely on. All right, people, I hope that there's a lot of love out there, because it's been a hard week. It's been a hard weekend. I hope that we can all enjoy some cake. Mm. It's been heavy, man. Hopefully tomorrow I'll get back to lighthearted prattle about eating lots of hot dogs or something. I've been totally slammed. I am emotionally drained at the latest. Like it is relentless. You know, I know it's something that I shouldn't let get to me, but I do let it get to me every now and then. Oh my gosh. Well, I hope people out there, whether you're in America, whether you're outside of America, whether inside one of the cities where some of these really crazy riots are going on, or whether you're in a little town watching on a dial-up connection, wherever you happen to be, I hope you're doing all right. I hope that people know that the world is good, by and large. Some amazing things are happening. Not only did all of this stuff happen, I did tune into the live stream of the SpaceX launch over the weekend, which was incredible. It was very inspiring. It was really cool to see this private corporation, SpaceX, work hand in hand with NASA to achieve something that's just absolutely incredible back on American soil. So yeah, it's not all darkness and fire and brimstone and everything like that. I hope people do know that. I hope you guys remember that there is a lot of love out there. Be good to one another. I think that's in the words of Bill and Ted from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Oh my goodness. What is the line from Bill and Ted? I think it's be excellent to one another or something like that. But yeah, realize that that things aren't burning. We're going to come back from this like so much stronger. And hopefully this tiny, very loud, very violent group gets stomped out of existence as soon as possible. So tomorrow, hopefully we'll get back to shenanigans. Until then, peace out. Love you guys. Keep the love going. And I'll catch you guys later.